Hi, welcome back to Invisible InCourage with the Invisible Disabilities Association. Today I'm here with Jake Stimell, and Jake is our Volunteer of the Year. So welcome, Jake.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So when we start off, tell us a little bit about your personal health story.
So I have a neuromuscular condition. I was diagnosed with low muscle tone when I was born, which, if you didn't know, isn't actually a diagnosis. And then in my freshman year of college, I had a bad fall and then went for a number of MRIs from a neurologist and didn't actually come out with a diagnosis, but what can you do?
And that is so common amongst people in the disabled community. Getting a diagnosis is such a tricky part, and it can be, even harder it's weird when people think that we're like hoping for a diagnosis, but at least that provides some sort of information and a path forward versus, just wondering and being curious. Being left in the dark is really challenging. So tell us about how you became an intern for the Invisible Disabilities Association.
So I was given a fellowship by my school to go on a trip for some academic pursuit. And then I thought that going the invisible disability route would be a great thing to do. And I reached out on the website, and Jess was very welcoming and responded right away. And it just worked out.
You are definitely one of Jess's favorite people. And what college do you go to?
I graduated in May from Franklin and Marshall College with a BA in psychology and a minor in sociology.
Very cool. So tell us about your internship. What did you do?
So last year, I worked on the National Disability ID Initiative. So I was working from my home in New York for most of the summer. So I was contacting state legislators across the country, having phone calls with legislators, emailing them. It was really cool. I actually helped get legislation introduced in New York, Pennsylvania, and Alabama.
Wow.
Yeah. And then for a week, I went to Castle Rock and went through Jess's meetings with him, went throughout his week, and that was also really cool.
That does sound really cool. Tell us more about the Disability ID program.
So the Disability ID program is all about, it's a voluntary disclosure on a state ID of a disability, mainly to help with interactions with law enforcement. And the whole thing started with someone getting pulled over in Ohio. The cop went over to the door to talk to the guy. The guy was fumbling around and wasn't making eye contact. The cop got him out of his car and thought he was drunk and ordered some sobriety tests, and the guy just had autism. And similar misunderstandings have happened throughout the country.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So how does the ID try to mitigate and help that situation?
So if this person had the ID, ideally, they would hand the ID to the cop, or they would see the ID and they would know that they had an invisible disability and would need some sort of accommodation, and hopefully would ask, like, what do you need me to do? What accommodations do you need? Most states didn't want a database of what the disability actually was for privacy reasons. Mm-hmm. So ideally the cop would just ask, what accommodations do you need?
That makes a lot of sense. And also, for people who are uncomfortable with having that information on their license, the Invisible Disability Association has little lanyards with just an ID tag that says, I have an invisible disability. And they're doing a lot of trainings at different Walmarts and different stores, and hopefully different colleges and schools around the country, where when you see someone wearing this badge or this name tag, it says, I need help. Please feel free to ask me. Because a lot of people do want to offer help, but they don't want to become invasive. And also sometimes you don't need help. You don't need people coming up to you and asking, how can I help?
I had a similar experience with my college law enforcement or public safety, and they were actually really good at handling it. I had fallen on campus and needed a ride back to my dorm, and one of the public safety officers was very nice about giving me a ride back.
That's so great. So tell us about how the policy worked.
Basically I would go on LinkedIn or Facebook or Google, and I would find legislators or find legislation that had been passed, look up the sponsors, and then I would contact the legislators, contact the state representatives or senators. There's a lot of non-responsiveness in this work, and you kind of got to be okay with that. But honestly, I was surprised at how many people did respond to me. Like, I was getting calls on my personal cell phone from state representatives, and honestly, they want to hear from people. They want to know what the people think the problems are, because they don't know all of the problems. So it helps them do their job better. Yeah, definitely. Do you have any suggestions for if people want to get involved and contact their legislators? Just don't be afraid. Just do it, especially if they're your own legislators, because they want to help even more, because they want your votes. They do everything to help their constituents. I was mostly contacting people that weren't my legislators, because we only have 2 legislators. But so yeah, there was a lot of contacting people, a lot of being surprised with how many responses I was getting, and yeah. That's so cool. So that can be so intimidating. Like, do you have to know legislative speak? Do you have to be very well versed on the issues? How can you approach it? You can approach it very casually, honestly. A lot of these, especially at the state level, these people understand that we're just ordinary people. Honestly, they're just ordinary people. Like, anyone could run for state representative. It's probably not that hard. It's not as easy to actually do the job, but yeah, it's very casual to talk to a legislator. You don't need to be well versed in public policy or economics or political science or really anything. You just gotta have an issue and care about it and want to do something. That is so great. So did you find it was more effective with getting calls back if you did it through email or through telephone or through letters? I really only sent emails. I mean, most of them listed a telephone number, but I was kind of afraid to call a legislator just because it's kind of daunting. And then letters, I don't know, I thought it was too old-fashioned, but I think that a lot of them do appreciate letters and appreciate phone calls. But emails, they appreciate also. Emails will often not go to them directly first. They'll go to a legislative aide or a secretary. Mm-hmm. But if the legislative aide or the secretary thinks it's worthwhile, then they'll forward it to the representative or senator. That's very cool. And it's really important to form a bond with those aides, correct? Yeah. I mean, I'm now connected on LinkedIn with a bunch of people a bunch of really cool political people, former governors and former representatives and senators. It's really cool. That is really cool. Yeah. So when you send the initial email, how long would it be? Would it just be requesting a meeting? Would it be explaining the program? What would you do? So Jess helped me formulate this email, but the email was 2 paragraphs, I think. What they like is having a PDF attachment with more information, because if they want more information, then they'll just click on that. And if they don't want more information, then they won't be bothered and they won't need to look at it. Yeah. And then in other nonprofit things that I've done since, I've always recommended doing a PDF attachment, just because I think for more information, it's the best way to go about it. That's a really good tip. So when one of the states was effective, you listed, was it 4 states that you? It was New York, Pennsylvania, and Alabama. 3 states. That's great. So how much communication did you have back and forth after the initial reach out? So in Pennsylvania, there were actually a few legislators that called me or emailed me. Wow. In Pennsylvania, I didn't. In New York and Alabama, there wasn't as much back and forth. In Alabama, Jess and I had a call with the senator,
Wow.
which was pretty cool.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
What an exciting opportunity.
Yeah, and it was honestly, it supported the whole, like, that disability rights is a nonpartisan movement. The one in Alabama was a Republican, and I think the other two were Democrats.
That is very cool. That also makes it less intimidating.
Yeah.
Very cool. So what other nonprofit work have you done?
So currently I am a summer research intern at Understood. We are researching organizations within the learning and thinking difference field. Oh. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I'm learning about like strategic ways to do your research and how to stretch your brain even more, and then also just the nonprofit side of stuff.
That is really cool. I know going through college, I use the disability office very frequently for accommodations. So what have you learned with working through that?
Just that creativity is really good. They formulated a group of interns with very diverse experiences, and they really push us to be creative in what we do and not just go with the organizations that are clearly for people with learning disabilities, but to stretch it and think, well, this organization could care about learning disabilities because they care about education or human potential or a list of fields, topics.
That is so cool. It's so needed. So many people, professors, teachers, they want to help, but they really have no idea where to start. Yeah. And even students, they know that they could use help, but where do we start?
I think a lot of students go throughout their lives without a diagnosis, and that's the toughest thing. But it's also it's hard to get a diagnosis sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's also really difficult when you go through different school systems that don't have a lot of resources, and so many people really get left behind because they're not properly accommodated for.
There's also just not enough knowledge on some of these learning disabilities, and that hurts the field
so much.
Yeah.
So if you were a student with a learning difference or a learning disability, what would your approach be? How would you speak up and ask for help?
I mean, the best thing is to be proactive. Like you said, go to the disability office because they care. That's their job. Right. I mean, I get it. Professors are supposed to care also, but they don't always care as much, or they don't know how to care as much. Yeah. So just be proactive. Don't be afraid to be assertive. One student that I spoke to when I was in college, she was talking about how she would how she was scared sometimes to like go to her professors and
definitely
and
intimidating.
And threaten her legal rights, but you gotta be prepared to do that, even though it can be daunting.
I agree. I definitely think so. And along with going to either the school counselor or the disabilities office, I would definitely try to set up a meeting before the semester or, whatever, with each teacher and each professor.
Do it early. Early.
Oh, absolutely. Right before a test, they usually are a lot less sympathetic. And really just explain what's going on. You don't have to list your diagnosis if you don't want to, but just say, for example, I would get really nauseated while reading, so having books on tape would help me a lot. And I would explain that, and I would also explain what they could provide for me and to do to make it easier. Because again, a lot of them want to help, but they just don't know how.
Right. It's the same thing as the workplace. Like if you don't feel comfortable saying your diagnosis, then just don't. But be forward about the accommodations that you need.
Definitely. And of course, you will get some people that will either not be able to accommodate you, or they just won't care enough.
Or they won't believe you.
Yeah.
Especially with invisible disabilities. Like,
absolutely.
If you don't go into a interview in a wheelchair, then sometimes they won't believe that you need anything, or they won't think to offer it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you have any tips on that kind of situation?
It really makes me mad when I see on job postings like if you need accommodations for the interview, please request them. Mm-hmm. Like, that shouldn't be how it is. It should be asking you. Because if you're going out and requesting them yourself, then it means that you've kind of already outed yourself as someone that is going to need accommodations. And yeah.
Right. And while obviously it's illegal not to hire someone because of that, it's still intimidating, and you don't know what's hiding behind the scenes. So what are some accommodations either at school or work that you've learned through this program that other people might just not know about?
Well, like, working right now, I've been working on a standing desk most of today.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, and standing desks are very, very prevalent in today's society. Yeah. A lot of corporate offices all have standing desks, not only for accommodations, but because they think it's actually best business.
Definitely. That's really cool. I love that. Would you suggest going in with accommodations that would help you specifically before having these meetings, and take some time to jot them down beforehand?
I mean, you should always have them in mind, I think, but it is a process that you go with the supervisor. Yeah. and with their input as well.
So tell us more about the struggle of not having a diagnosis. The diagnosis process is exhausting, and so many people are either not diagnosed or they're only partially diagnosed, and that can really change people's, one, believing you, and two, just receiving proper care.
I mean, yeah, going into any social situation, it's harder to say that you have this condition that you don't really know what it is than to be able to say what it is because you know what it is. Yeah, I mean, any situation that you find yourself in, you gotta be comfortable and tell and say what's going on and what you need to be successful.
Definitely. So what inspired you to go from your private experience into all of these nonprofits and public advocacy?
Just wanting to help people, wanting to advance the cause. I've always thought of myself as someone with a disability, but someone that was pretty that was able to do a lot despite despite what I deal with. Like, it doesn't prevent me that much, so I should go out and help people who it does prevent them more.
That's great. What are some misconceptions about either disabilities as a whole or specifically invisible disabilities that you would like to clear up?
There's a big one that not understanding that disabilities manifest themselves in different ways. Even the same diagnosis can manifest itself in different ways. And I think that it, like, let's say, for example, you go into a job and you say you have cerebral palsy, like, they won't, like, they might not believe you because you don't look like you have it. But, like, that's not how it is because it manifests itself in different ways. And then just like being flexible, like understanding that there's a ton of things that people deal with, and just that everyone needs supports for them to be successful.
I definitely agree with that. And like you said, with disabilities being on a range, even within the same disability, I work a lot with the migraine community, and every once in a while you'll see comments like, you don't have migraine because if you were in a migraine attack, you wouldn't be able to be on the computer or you wouldn't be able to go outside. And that's just not true. And it's contributing more stigma even inside of our community than outside. You don't understand what other people are going through, so just believe them. And it's can only help people that way, and it can only help yourself. There's no sense in trying to judge other people for what you would have been in that situation, because you really don't know, which is honestly what the disability community is trying to get the outside world to believe anyway. So having it internalized is horrible and just really impedes progress. So what other kind of advocacy do you do?
So earlier this year, like earlier in the pandemic, I was assisting 2 organizations with ADA 30th anniversary celebrations, reaching out and trying to get other people involved with them. Yeah.
That was just this week.
Yeah.
So what kind of celebrations did you have planned? Like what was involved with that?
I mean, it was all virtual at this point, but just I don't know, there were musical celebrations. There were a lot of talks going on about advocacy, about employment, about a whole range of things.
So what does the ADA mean to you, and what progress do you believe still needs to be done?
The ADA is very powerful. The ADA lays out that it's illegal for people to discriminate, but it still happens. There's still a lot of stigma. There's got to be where we need to move forward is to establish a level of understanding that just because you don't see something is that it's not there. Yeah. I don't know how you can do that with legislation though. Legislation doesn't always get you to where you want to be.
Definitely. What has been the hardest part of your journey or your advocacy work? Both.
The hardest part of my advocacy work has just been that, well, honestly, in the past few months, like that advocacy doesn't always lead to a job. It's hard to find a job in advocacy. And then at the end of the day, when you're done working and then you have to do advocacy, it's hard to just have so much energy. So
yes.
So advocacy is hard because it's hard to find a job. And then if you don't find the job, then it's hard to do it recreationally because it takes a lot out of you.
It definitely is. And that's one of the reasons why the advocacy sphere seems to be taken over by, privileged people. And we're not hearing so many different voices because so many of us aren't able to do this advocacy work without being paid. And so it just takes a second seat, and so many voices are unable to be heard through that, which is definitely a challenge for our community. Okay, so the question we always end on is, through your darkest days and your toughest hours, what gives you the courage just to get through one more day?
I think just helping others, advancing where we are in disability really gets me through the day. Learning more and learning the lived experiences of other people. That's been one of my main goals since I graduated college, was to learn more about what's out there, because I deal with something that is very, very minute in the world of disability, and there's so much more for me to learn. So that's been what I've been trying to do.
That's so exciting. Do you have any tips on how to do that if someone else wants to get involved?
Just getting out there as much as possible, going on LinkedIn, networking a lot, reading everything that you can. I don't obviously read everything I can, just because I don't. But there's a lot out there. People write a lot, read those. A lot of stuff to do.
That's great. Do you have any other final messages to get out to the invisible disability community?
Just keep fighting. There's a war to be won. And it's not a war. It's a battle that a lot of people in high places want to be won. And don't be afraid of advocacy. I know it's a tough, daunting looking space, but legislators, especially those on the state level, they really want to hear from you.
Definitely. And also, even if you don't want to get involved with the legislator, advocacy is just sharing your story. Every time you share your story, you help tear down some of the stigma, and it can be incredibly powerful. We just need to talk more and try to educate as many people in our lives and as possible. Jake, thanks so much for coming on today. This has been very fun, and I'm very excited to learn so much about you.
Thank you for having me.